For centuries, humanity has asked one of the greatest questions imaginable. What happens when we die? Is consciousness simply the product of electrical activity inside the brain? Or could the human mind continue to exist even after the body shuts down? Across hospitals, operating rooms, and emergency wards around the world, thousands of people have reported something extraordinary after coming dangerously close to death. Many describe leaving their bodies, observing medical procedures from above, traveling through darkness toward an intense light, or encountering deceased relatives they could not have known were dead. What makes some of these stories so remarkable is not simply the emotional experience, but the documented details that appear impossible to explain through ordinary brain function alone. Tonight, we explore some of the most extraordinary near-death experiences ever recorded, cases that continue to challenge science, medicine, and our understanding of consciousness itself. One of the most famous documented cases is that of Pam Reynolds, an American singer-songwriter who underwent an extremely rare brain surgery in 1991. During the operation, surgeons intentionally stopped her heartbeat, drained blood from her brain, and lowered her body temperature to near death in order to remove a giant aneurysm. Medical monitors confirmed that her brain activity had flatlined. She was clinically dead. Yet after the surgery, Reynolds reported detailed observations of the operating room while she was supposedly unconscious. She accurately described the appearance of surgical instruments, conversations between doctors, and even specific details of the procedure that occurred while her eyes were taped shut and earphones emitted loud clicking sounds designed to eliminate external hearing. Doctors and researchers who later investigated the case acknowledged that many of her observations appeared difficult to explain using traditional neuroscience alone. If the brain had ceased functioning, how could conscious awareness still occur? Another extraordinary case comes from Dr. Eben Alexander, a neurosurgeon trained at Harvard Medical School. Unlike many people who describe near-death experiences, Alexander had spent much of his career dismissing them as hallucinations produced by a dying brain. But in 2008, everything changed. Alexander contracted a rare bacterial meningitis infection that caused his brain's neocortex, the part responsible for higher thinking and consciousness, to become severely damaged. He remained in a deep coma for 7 days. According to his medical team, his chances of survival were extremely low. During that coma, Alexander later described experiencing what he called a hyper-real realm of existence. He spoke of vivid landscapes, profound feelings of love and peace, and encounters with spiritual beings. Most importantly, he insisted that his experience could not have been generated by normal brain activity because the areas of his brain required for dreaming, imagination, or hallucinations were essentially offline at the time. His case sparked worldwide debate. Skeptics argued that residual brain activity could still explain the experience, but Alexander maintained that consciousness itself appeared capable of existing independently from the physical brain. Then there is the case of Maria, a migrant worker in Seattle who suffered cardiac arrest and was revived after being clinically dead for several minutes. After recovery, Maria claimed she had floated outside her body and observed a single tennis shoe sitting on a narrow ledge outside the hospital building several floors above the ground. A social worker named Kimberly Clark became intrigued by the strange detail and searched for the shoe. To her astonishment, she found it exactly where Maria described, hidden from normal view and only visible from outside the building. Critics continue debating the case, but supporters argue it represents evidence of perception occurring beyond ordinary sensory awareness. Researchers studying near-death experiences have documented thousands of similar reports across cultures and religions. Many experiencers describe moving through tunnels toward brilliant light, encountering deceased loved ones, or experiencing overwhelming peace and unity. Surprisingly, children too young to understand religious concepts sometimes report the same core patterns. One of the most significant scientific investigations into the phenomenon was conducted by Dr. Sam Parnia, a critical care physician and researcher who launched the AWARE study, one of the largest studies ever performed on cardiac arrest survivors. His team examined patients who were clinically dead yet later reported conscious awareness during resuscitation efforts. Some patients accurately recalled details of conversations, medical procedures, and events occurring while their hearts had stopped beating. In several cases, brain activity should have already ceased within seconds after cardiac arrest. Yet conscious memory appeared to persist. Modern neuroscience still struggles to explain these experiences completely. Traditional science argues that consciousness is produced entirely by the brain, meaning awareness should disappear when brain function stops. But near-death experiences continue raising difficult questions. Could consciousness be something more fundamental? Could the brain act less like a generator of consciousness and more like a receiver? Some physicists and philosophers have proposed theories suggesting consciousness may not be confined solely to the physical body. Others believe near-death experiences are complex hallucinations created by oxygen deprivation, chemicals, or dying neural activity. Yet no single explanation fully accounts for every documented case, especially those involving verified observations during periods of clinical death. What makes these stories so powerful is not only the mystery surrounding them, but the profound transformations reported afterward. Many survivors lose their fear of death completely. Others become more compassionate, spiritually awakened, or deeply convinced that life continues beyond the body. Even among scientists, the debate continues growing. While mainstream medicine remains cautious, the evidence surrounding certain cases refuses to disappear. Near-death experiences occupy a strange territory between science, philosophy, and spirituality, a frontier where modern understanding meets one of humanity's oldest mysteries. Perhaps the greatest lesson from these extraordinary experiences is not necessarily proof of an afterlife, but a reminder that consciousness itself may be far more mysterious than we currently understand. And maybe, just maybe, death is not the end of awareness, but the beginning of something we have yet to fully comprehend. As we come to the end of this exploration into near-death experiences, one thing becomes clear: humanity still does not fully understand the true nature of consciousness. For generations, science has taught us that the brain creates the mind, that our thoughts, memories, emotions, and awareness are simply the result of neurons firing inside a biological machine. But the extraordinary stories we explore tonight continue to challenge that assumption in ways that are difficult to ignore. People from different countries, cultures, religions, and backgrounds, many of whom had never met or even believed in spiritual experiences, describe remarkably similar events after coming close to death. They speak of leaving their bodies, observing events they should not have seen, encountering deceased loved ones, and experiencing a level of peace and awareness far beyond ordinary human understanding. Some return transformed forever, no longer fearing death, and often becoming more compassionate, loving, and spiritually awakened. Now, does this absolutely prove that consciousness exists separately from the brain? Science would say not yet. Skeptics continue searching for neurological explanations, suggesting these experiences may result from chemical reactions, oxygen deprivation, or the brain's final survival mechanisms. And to be fair, science requires evidence, repeatability, and caution before drawing conclusions. That skepticism is important because it keeps us grounded and searching for truth instead of simply believing what we want to believe. But at the same time, we cannot ignore the growing number of documented cases that remain difficult to explain through conventional neuroscience alone. Cases where patients accurately described conversations and medical procedures while clinically unconscious. Cases where people reported seeing objects or events they seemingly could not have perceived with normal senses. Cases investigated by doctors, surgeons, nurses, and researchers who themselves were left questioning what they witnessed. Perhaps the real importance of near-death experiences is not whether they definitively prove life after death, but whether they force us to rethink the limits of human understanding. Throughout history, humanity has often mistaken current knowledge for complete knowledge. There was once a time when people believed the Earth was the center of the universe, that invisible germs did not exist, or that traveling to the moon was impossible. Science evolves because mysteries push us forward. Consciousness may be one of the greatest mysteries of all. Even today, neuroscientists still cannot fully explain why subjective awareness exists in the first place. Why do we experience emotions, thoughts, love, fear, imagination, or self-awareness? Why does matter organized in a certain way suddenly become conscious? Some scientists now admit that consciousness itself may be more fundamental to reality than we previously imagined. And maybe that is why near-death experiences continue fascinating millions of people around the world. Because deep inside, every human being wonders what lies beyond this life. We all ask the same questions eventually. Is death truly the end? Does some part of us continue? Are we more than flesh and biology? Whether you believe these experiences are spiritual glimpses into another reality or simply unexplained neurological phenomena, they reveal something deeply important about being human. They remind us how fragile life truly is. They remind us that our time here is limited, and perhaps most importantly, they remind us that love, compassion, relationships, and human connection seem to matter more than wealth, status, or material possessions. Many people who survive near-death experiences return saying the same thing, that love felt more real than anything they had ever experienced on Earth, that in those moments beyond the edge of death, what mattered most was not success or money, but how they treated others and the impact they had on the lives around them. Maybe there is wisdom in that, regardless of what ultimately happens after death. At BlinkTV, we believe the most important conversations are the ones that challenge us to think beyond the ordinary. Topics like consciousness, existence, science, spirituality, and the unknown remind us that the universe is still filled with mysteries waiting to be explored. And perhaps the greatest mystery of all is not what happens after we die, but what consciousness truly is while we are alive. Thank you for watching BlinkTV. If you enjoyed this documentary, make sure to subscribe, leave your thoughts in the comments, and join us for more explorations into the mysteries of science, humanity, history, and the unknown. Because sometimes, the questions are just as important as the answers.